Hello and welcome to Mount Edgcumbe Hospice in St Austell and our beautiful grounds. In fact, we're just in the entranceway, so if you've been here before, you'll recognise the driveway behind me. But today we want to take you on a tour because these are truly spring gardens, and this time of year a riot of colour erupts around the hospice building. And joining me for the tour is George Kestell, the Cornish gardener, very well known to a lot of people. And George has a link to Mount Edgcumbe.
That's right. When I started work first after leaving school, I was with English China Clays, the clay company, and they donated a large tree, and old Norman and myself came over, so the old chap and the apprentice came over, and I was about 17, 18, and we dug a large hole here somewhere. I can't identify which one it was now, but we planted this quite large tree, and it had a girth perhaps 5, 6, 7 inches across. We planted that in, and that was one of the first trees in the ground because none of these were here then.
And I did say in the introduction, this is truly a proper Cornish spring garden, isn't it?
My goodness, yes. Here we are, sort of middle end of March. All the daffodils out, camellias out, magnolias, which I think we'll have a look at in a moment. But there's so much here that typifies St Austell, which is really the heart of Cornwall and spring gardens.
Well, shall we take a tour?
I think so, yeah.
You can be the expert, obviously. Let's make our way around the edge of the building.
Lovely, yes.
One of the glorious parts of the Mount Edgcumbe Hospice garden is the magnolias, and this is the time of year to see them. George, we walked past two by the entrance, a deep, vibrant pink one and a white one. Tell us about those.
That's right, well the big pink one, beautiful, well positioned there, and this year is such a good year for them because we have had some frost, but here you're so close to the coast, we don't get the flowers blighted that you may in some places, particularly some of our Cornish valleys that get that are frost pockets. And then the white one we came across was one of the stellata. The petals were fairly single and pointy, and that's stellata star-like magnolia. And got another one here, although it hasn't come out in flower yet, or even leaf, it's just twigs. So, but what, 4 weeks time, that'll be out in flower as well. But the one behind me is wonderful, and of course so common in Cornwall. You've driven down through Truro, and of course there are those massive ones there that come out in flower and always mentioned on the radio when they're out in flower. So really, I think they're typical of Cornish gardens this time of year, as are the camellias that are around us as well.
And you also stopped to look at a little bush just down the pathway.
That's
and
right.
Held the little flowers in your hand. What was that?
Tiny little cup-shaped flowers. It's pyrus. Some people have quite a lot. Forest flame is one of the names of one of the pyrus, because when the young growth comes out, it comes out in bright red foliage and then gradually goes green. But those flowers are so good for bees, even though it's not a native. I mean, they come from Asia, but really good plant, and fantastic again this time of year. Good flowering all over the county.
And is this a good garden for bees? I'd love to think it is.
Yeah, I'm certain it is. Bees, also for birds. I mean, we can hear the birds in the background, but lots of bees would be attracted here. You've got the right sort of ground that isn't over manicured, where you'll get the solitary bees. Now, solitary bees aren't necessarily, they're not sort of miserable and live by themselves all the time, but they're usually ones that live in groups of less than 10 or 20. So they'll make holes in the ground and they'll be living there over winter. And of course, a lot of the bumblebees live in ground like this as well. So I'd have thought this is a really good garden. You've got a lot of things from the daffodils this time of year all the way through till late summer. There'll always be something for them to forage, yeah.
Well, I've got something just up here I want to show you that's always fascinated me. So we'll move on and we'll take a look at that next.
Right, okay.
And this is what I've brought George to see, this incredible archway, which I can't work out if it's one tree or two.
I think this is 2 trees, one planted either side of the path, and then they've been probably tied together to get this arch. But you know, when you go to see other people's gardens, and this is why it's important to go to a garden open and have a look and see what's there, you get ideas, you see something that you wouldn't see in another garden. And I think this is a lovely little feature. And also when you walk through, and if you're pushing a wheelchair through here, which I've done, it's lovely to have something to talk about. It gives you an element of surprise to come through here because you don't know what's beyond. And when I did that just now, one thing I found that it surprised me was hiding behind this lovely arch is an even lovelier little shrub. So typical spring plant. A lot of people might recognise it if it was scarlet red. And my grandmother used to call it, oh, that's my japonica, dear. So this is a white form of japonica, proper name Magnolias japonica, and it's an Asian plant, but we usually see them in a bright red colour rather than this white one. This is probably one called Snow. There are 2 or 3 different white ones. So that was lovely that you come through the arch and then there's something that I looked at and thought, oh, I like that. And again, I said to you about coming into different gardens, just made me think I ought to get one of those for my own garden. So you're always picking up on things and thinking, yeah, I could do that in my garden. Ideas to take home. Brilliant, brilliant reason for going to gardens.
I think this little garden, it's like a courtyard at the back of the hospice, is just beautiful. And there are some lovely little plants there. We've got ornaments behind us, which are the little deer. And just a minute ago, always away, before we put the camera on, a squirrel ran through, looking very healthy indeed. But George, this is a proper oasis here, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And again, often with courtyards, you can have things that are a little bit more tender, a little bit more unusual. I seem to be now snuggled into a plant that's flowered last year, obviously, dead now, but it'll come up again in a few months. Angel's fishing rods, pendulous pink flowers, they're lovely. Behind you is an olive, I'd forgotten the name for a moment, but an olive. So Mediterranean, typical Mediterranean plants, and we've got agapanthus around us, and just to my left, very long strap-shaped leaf we spoke about just now, which is one of the colourful varieties of New Zealand flax. Proper name is Formium. And you've got acers here. This will come out into leaf in a few weeks with beautiful coral colour young leaves, which will go green. And then of course you've got lots of rooms looking out onto this, so in the autumn the colours here will be lovely. Yellows going into orange, into the proper sort of American type fall. So,
is there any way to tell which plants would have been here 40 years ago when the hospice first opened?
I don't think many of those right around us will be, but behind me there's a tree there. You've got a bird box just gone in. That's a good 30 years old, so that could be original. Some of the bigger ones around, and we've seen a few further down into the garden that are certainly 35 to 40 years old.
Would the Magnolias be that old?
Yes, the big white stellata, I would think that's got to be over 35 years old, so those are original plantings, yes.
And now I want to take you to see something absolutely lovely. It's a new addition. It's not a plant,
Right.
but it's a new addition to the garden, and I think you might just appreciate it. George, I want you to meet this beautiful boat in Devon. So we had a patient who was looking out from one of the rooms, room 1 in fact, and it is a bare wall.
It is, yeah.
And he said how much he missed seeing sailing boats. And someone I know in Foy was producing these at the time, and we asked if we could buy one, and she very, very generously donated us this boat. He chose the name, the patient, in Devon, and so the idea was it would go on the wall, and the wall was looking a little bit untidy, so we said to the maintenance team, could you just paint the wall, you know, a bit of magnolia? And this is what they came up with. Isn't it super?
It's wonderful. I always think it's amazing when you say to somebody, oh, can you paint a wall? And then they go that little bit further. Makes such a difference. I mean, I know room 1 very well because that's the room that Mark had. So I know that wall was a bit blank. So to have something there to look out on means so much to the patient. It's beautiful because it's typical of Cornwall. And your part of Cornwall, because I mean, I'm an inland person, you're always out by the sea. So lovely to have a boat there and the sails. But of course, what I love about it is the plants that's in it. These lovely little violas. And again, you go to see different gardens. You have so many wonderful people that have their gardens open for you. So you can go and look at these gardens. And then you see perhaps sometimes not the unusual rare plants, quite common. You can get these for £1, £2 from most garden centres or even supermarkets. You can buy half a dozen in a punnet. Pop them into somewhere like this. You do need to be perhaps a bit better than you, Tamsin, to make sure they're watered. These are well watered, and you get these wonderful colours. So beautiful little violas, little types of pansies, and if I can just go down, what colours we've got here. Beautiful little pot. This area wasn't sort of the most bright, but put a few pots of these in. And it's just lovely. So I think this is a lovely display. These beautiful little violas, they'll go on for months in flower. And then for the winter, you've got these lovely ivies as well, which will trail down into your beautifully painted ocean.
And I have to say, that's one of the learning curves for me. You know, you talk about our open gardens being an ideal opportunity to see other people's ideas and perhaps pick up new ideas for your own garden. Never thought of a feature wall. But look what a difference it's made in this courtyard.
Right, now, you could take that home with you and think, well, I don't know that I'd want a boat, but you might perhaps put a steam train on it or something. You know, you could do something and then have a structure that's like this with something growing in it and paint some other scene. You could take a seaside scene, pop a castle in it with 1 or 2 more tropical looking plants. You can take this idea, copy it exactly as it is, or adapt. And that's the thing with gardens. You know, you might think, well, actually, I'll have that. We've got a courtyard, we've got a window looking out, that not looking anywhere. Do something like this. Easy.
For me, the obvious place to end our tour is at this absolutely beautiful monkey puzzle tree. It is an iconic part of Cornwall Hospice care now, because a few years ago we came up with the idea of using it as our Christmas tree. Yep, might not make sense to you when I first say that, but our head of maintenance, Dave Johns, came up with a very clever way of using slices of drain pipe to then hook over the arms so that the lights then go like a swag around, and we have to have a cherry picker come to put the lights on. But you can see this tree from all over St Austell, and I think it's absolutely stunning. And George, I wonder if this is one of the original plants from 40 years ago.
Well, I'd describe this as a baby still, really, because it's still quite young. But looking at its bottom, it's got quite a large bottom, as is typical in Cornwall. But yeah, I think that well could be over 35 years old, so it could well be 40 years. It could be one of the original plants. And I say a baby. I don't think it's a third of its eventual height yet. It will triple.
Only a third?
Well, I'm not sure it's there. They will get up, somebody will correct me now, but you know, they're going to get 80, 90, 100 feet in their natural environment, which is South America, Chile, Argentina, down around that area. What I love about them is and I think I'm right in saying fractal geometry, the way it spirals. When you look along the leaf branches, you've got the spiral effect, and you can also see it on the trunk. And if you stand far enough back, you can see, and this is a really good example of it, where the branches curve up like a helter-skelter, that sort of shape. So beautiful structural tree, beautiful architectural tree. And you know, being in the hospice here, we do need things that you recognise, that you're familiar with. So if people across the town can see it, I think that's something that people say, oh, that's the hospice monkey puzzle tree. Oh, they call them all sorts of other things like fir trees and things that they're not. And I also think this is something that is going to go on for another, it'll probably live for another 70, 90 years fairly easily.
Good.
And it won't be
I'd hate
old,
to think it wouldn't be here, actually. It's so much a part of the grounds.
Yes.
A bit like the other recognisable bit is as you come to our entrance, all the heathers.
Yes, yes. And again, they're lovely because they've got such a long winter long flowering period all through the winter, which is when you need that bit of colour, especially if you're coming in on a cold day. It's lovely to see some bright colours, the white, the pinks, and you've got such a good range. And they're clipped in an undulating fashion, so they almost look like mountains, reminiscent really of perhaps Bodmin Moor or something like that.
George, thank you for joining us on a tour of the Mount Edgcumbe Hospice Gardens this afternoon. You've helped bring the sun out. We've seen some fascinating plants. Have you enjoyed it? I
always love to go into any garden, but this is a lovely garden because there's so many things here. You've got a huge collection of plants here, so it's always a pleasure to come and have a look around the gardens here at the hospice.